Welcome to the World Football Summit podcast, the show for football industry leaders who want to stay ahead of the game. We bring you the latest insights, trends, and stories from the experts driving innovation and progress in sports business worldwide. Join us as we dive deep into the ideas and initiatives transforming the world of football. From sustainability and innovation to player development, fan engagement, and everything in between. Our goal is to unite the global football industry and drive positive change and progress. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Rayde, CMO at World Football Summit. Today, Rayde is back on the show for another masterclass on the state of the industry. We talk about the role of sports content today in the aftermath of the launch of David Beckham's documentary, the potential and the valuation of MLS and NWSL teams and how brands can capitalize on that momentum. We had a super interesting conversation about what football can learn from the major American leagues, before closing off with trends and dynamic CCs in the industry. This, as is always with the case with Rayde, was tremendously fun. You will not want to miss this episode. And you know who didn't miss it? My cup of Juan Valdez, which is 100% premium Colombian coffee. Now, as I've said before, I am very picky when it comes to coffee. And I must say, Juan Valdez definitely hits the bar for me. But this cup of coffee is much more than that. It is a premium blend developed by female coffee makers, and Juan Valdez has this program in which they look to empower these women both economically and socially. This resonates very much with the Female Leadership in Football initiative we launched at World Football Summit a few months back. So I'm very excited to partner with them to offer this premium blend to you. You can order it online at es.juanvaldez.com. Again, that's es.juanvaldez.com. And they actually have a special discount for the World Football Summit podcast listeners. All you need to do is enter the code WFS podcast at checkout. Again, that's WFS, capital letters, followed by podcast at checkout. And the best thing is they deliver to all markets in Europe. So give it a try and let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast on your platform of choice and share it with your industry colleagues. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, where every week we send updates, trends, and everything that goes on at our events. You can find the link in the show notes. And one of those events is World Football Summit Asia, taking place in Jeddah on December 12th and 13th. Are you going to miss it? Tickets are available right now, so make sure you visit the website and grab yours. Now, enjoy this conversation with Rayde Luis Baez, founder at The Connect. Well, Rayde, welcome back to the World Football Summit podcast. I told you we were going to have a round two, and I'm happy we're finally making it happen. So what's up? What you've been up to lately?
First, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I always feel like home, like I'm home. So, call me whenever you want. That's for sure.
Don't say that out loud. Some people may be listening. Anyway, so I don't know what you've been up to. You were at World Football Summit a few weeks back. I know. Tell us, any new updates or maybe just reflect on your experience. You just participated in a couple of panels there, sorry. So
amazing as always. Actually, it's interesting because at least I have the fortune that every time that I go to World Football Summit, I get to participate in different panels of different topics. So one of them are more governance, another one more business-like, and so on. And this year the conversation was really good. I got to learn about digital twins, which, I heard about and read about. So it was a very interesting conversation, and also got to be part of a conversation about, governance and the role of players in football, which is, I would say, quite, pressing and interesting in nowadays. So it was always fun and great to meet a lot of people new and meet with old friends as well.
Yeah, I mean, the governance topic, we're going to talk a little bit about that later on today. And the digital twin stuff, I mean, you were with Mike and Robert, who were actually guests on the show. And I remember that conversation was super fun, super enlightening. I'm sure you had a blast. But I mean, that's why we rely on you so much, because, we throw a panel at you and you just run with it, whatever it is. So
it's always good to be eager, to learn and experiment, and also like people say, swim out of your depth, that's always good as well.
There you go. There you go. It's kind of like a way to, grow and have that moment of, I actually heard this on the podcast. It's kind of like how this, oh crap moment, like what I had gotten into, but then it's fun to actually learn new stuff. So interesting. But anyway, Rayde, I wanted to talk to you because it was interesting, the launch of David Beckham's new documentary. And I thought to myself, who can I speak about sports content today? And that's when I, reached out to you and you were willing to talk. So, and why I did this is because in the past I've heard you speak about how, the search for relevance, connectedness, and even creating a sustainable business has many avenues. And I was thinking, do you believe in the era that we are today, that a documentary is the most effective one?
Absolutely. And I would also be a bit more precise in terms of not any documentary. So the power of storytelling, and documentaries have that power if done correctly, is actually to be able to unearth and give you different faces to a story that either you didn't know, which happens, or that you thought you knew but you didn't know the actual other sides of the story, right? So I think that in sports and entertainment in general, and even from business, now being able to create and do powerful storytelling is actually the game to actually be able to give your property, your athlete, your league, club, or whatever it is, competition, and a new angle and new access to audiences. Basically, because now we are in a very massive, I would say, demographic and generational shift. So the sport that we knew, the competitions that we knew, don't resonate the same with the younger generations. Yeah. They, in basketball, they don't have the link to Jordan like I had. My daughters actually learn about Jordan because I like to have some shoes about Jordans, and because I have a Funko figure, and they say, "What's this toy?" So I had to explain first, don't touch the Funko. So it's because Jordan is a collectible, and then Space Jam and all that. So that's their connection. It's not even the game. They haven't seen a single second of him playing, but they know about him being the GOAT because of what I told them. And when they're older, maybe they'll connect to that through watching The Last Dance, which will be by then a vintage documentary, not necessarily like watching games, right? So it is a powerful tool because it's timeless. So doing storytelling of real stories within and around the sport is timeless, not like a result or a game that is finite by definition. Right?
Yeah. To me, though, storytelling, it has a tremendous power, but it comes to I believe it has come to a point where it's actually not a key to win it more. It's more kind of like a key to play, if you will. Everybody has to do storytelling. And for example, in the specific case of storytelling and documentaries, I was thinking, Michael Jordan, Stephen Curry, LeBron James, even back in the day, they've all have launched their own documentary. And in the case of Beckham, who I've always seen as a pioneer, in athlete marketing, it kind of feels like he's a little bit, I don't know, quote unquote, late to the game. So I don't know if you agree with this. I wanted to ask. And then I also wanted to know, why is it the time, now to launch this stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question, because sometimes, and if you talk to any producer, it happens that you are creating a great story or a great movie or a great series, but something happens and then it's controversial or it doesn't have the space for the attention that you wanted to have. You could say, I'm a fan and student of the business, actually, and I was eager to hear his side of the story, especially in regards to his tenure or part of his career in the U.S. Right? I've read about it. I've seen things about it, and we're seeing the effect. But timing is everything, and probably for him, from a business perspective, there's no better timing than now. Being a co-owner of Inter Miami, being an art, being the beginning of what we're seeing now as the evolution of Major League Soccer, for example. So, by coincidence, it's something that was planned or not, who knows? In the case of the Last Dance of Michael Jordan, that was footage, and actually it was shot with the intention to doing something they didn't know when, and actually went to me like 20 something years after the moment, right? So, we were eager for content because it was the middle of the pandemic, but in the end, you cannot plan for this. A good story is a good story always.
Write that down. A good story is a good story. But, I'm just wondering, do you think there's a saturation of sports content? Because you have it all over the place. You have your games, you have highlights, you have your documentaries, you have even your games, even if you will, right? I mean, your video games, your fantasy games, it's all around. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, it feels, to be honest, it feels like there's a saturation point because of the offer that we have. But again, we have also the power of choosing. And reflecting on the beginning of the conversation, we're discussing, the connection, the generational connection to certain things that happen in sports, right? From the competition standpoint, from the business standpoint, and so on. We are of an age, you and I, that we watch and consume content linearly. So if we want to watch sports, we needed to wait for a certain time in a certain day to actually watch the game that we wanted to watch. Now technology enables you to watch whatever you want, whenever you want. Evidently, there's slight difference because if it's live sport, you might, get the spoiler of the result if you haven't watched the game. But the reality is that you have that flexibility. So is there too much content? I wouldn't say. I mean, there's over 8 billion people in the planet. So if the thing is that what I don't think is there is enough good content for it to actually be able to be successful. And that's a tricky question because you can have a perfect production, great resources, a great idea, and because of timing or context or whatever, it just flops. But it's there. It's in a library of content that you can revisit and so. And I do that from time to time. I log into ESPN and watch 30 for 30 episodes that I overlooked 10 years ago, and just watch them now because the story is relevant for me in that moment. Yeah. So the only learning here is that content needs to be really good for you to be able to sustain. And another thing is how you produce content and how you fund that production and so on. So it's not an endless pursuit, let's say.
Yeah, you were speaking about good content, and I would say also maybe there's not enough good content, and maybe there's not enough relevant content. Up to your point that there's 8 million people, and I think all of us are going to have different tastes and different, So in that segue into my next question, which is okay. So what's the next trend in sports content going to? For example, there's a lot of conversation about behind the scenes content, or I don't know if that's an example, or if there's any other.
I think that by design, and this is something that you could say that recently the Formula One did, which is with Drives to Survive, which was creating content thinking of a specific audience pool. So they created content to most of all capture the attention of the American audiences, right? So when you study content, you know that the content there, for it to be successful, it has to have a certain set of elements and cliffhangers and turns and looks and drama to understand that. So that was the design of Drive to Survive, and that's how it performed well. I think that no one could plan that actually would have revolutionized the perception of Formula One in the US so rapidly. And also, to be honest, for audiences like in the European audience, which is more accustomed to the product of Formula One, has even resonated very well because it's an angle and it's a tone of voice that, let's say, dramatic tone that is not common here, and actually that's a key. So what I do see is that properties, and you could say that mostly properties that are considered to be legendary or legacy properties like, Formula One, in certain cases, MotoGP, the America's Cup, the Ryder Cup, you name it. These type of old established competitions need to rejuvenate themselves via content. And actually creating content is going to do something that you mentioned before, which is it's not something that you need to be in. It's actually a ticket to play in and be relevant, and that is a commercial objective. So for America's Cup to go to the next level, if you look at there's the space they play in, so it's luxury, it's elite, so a lot of luxury brands are involved in it. But even those brands, in their own right and space, in their own marketing push, they are trying to cater to newer generations. So they're doing different products, they're doing different communications and so on. So the competition, to be relevant with younger audiences, needs to break through so those brands continue to support them, right? So that's something that I see happening, using storytelling as a commercial tool. And the other part is actually being able to tailor storytelling to, kind of pinch or poke certain audience pools across the planet that interest you. If you want to be relevant in Africa, you need to storytell in a different way than in Europe or in Asia or in the US. So you need to be able to actually produce that content in that way.
And not only that, I guess you have to distribute it, effectively, like to the audience that is actually interested in that content. And that's where technology like artificial intelligence is going to play a big role. But that's a topic for
that's another chapter. No, but in terms of distribution, I think there's an interesting hint now that we can see also with soccer. So the logic is that football is they say that is the most global sport, right? So as being the most global sport, and it's actually a very old established sport, what you have is sports of interest in different areas. You'll see that in the peninsula, the Arabic Peninsula, and the countries in the Emirates and Saudi Arabia or Asia or Africa and so on. But distribution is traditionally scattered and fragmented because the traditional sports media model is fragmented. It's on a market by market basis, and even it's on a region by region basis sometimes, and actually makes it very difficult to actually to access certain pieces of the product. What MLS did with Apple was super simplify that, and actually have a global distribution partner that in the same seamless way distributes everything. And they part with something that is very, very powerful, which is that Apple had, I don't know how many millions of customers already captive through the cell phones or the tablets or whatever. They have the accounts, and if you like soccer and or football, and now Messi is there and he's driving the conversation, and hopefully more stars come and the league starts to grow, you will have a one-click solution to actually watch the product. So I definitely do think that is a trend that the big tech companies will push the industry to go there. Evidently, you can hear argumentation on the contrary, and especially the intermediaries of media rights wouldn't like that because it deflates the market and it deflates the competition. So that makes it less attractive for them or even certain competitions. But in reality, having macro platforms or having, widespread distribution is actually a way in which you can curb the disaffection that certain generations are having with sports. Because if you want to watch basketball and you're a basketball fan in Spain, for example, now you have everything kind of contained in the same platform, because now Movistar has EuroLeague, NBA, and the National League. But the year before, you had to have two platforms to follow it because EuroLeague was in the zone. So then the younger generations are more conscious about that. They won't make an extra effort to actually complete the consumption that they want. And that's why they lean towards short form, highlight type of consumption, because it's easier to access and you can actually access it on YouTube.
In a way, it's about convenience at the end of the day, no? So like, it's kind of like keywords that we've talked about, like, relevance, convenience, quality. And so, but not to, derail too much of our conversation. And we're speaking about Beckham before. And, this also, if we think about the recent MLS valuations, it is true that David Beckham pulled off an amazing deal when he secured the rights to buy, for a fee, and then to buy an MLS franchise for a very reduced fee. And so, and now, the valuation of Inter Miami, they're actually projecting, I think it's a 1 billion, right? So, and you see LAFC also reaching that type of valuation, and I mean, it's just skyrocketing. What do you think are the keys behind such an amazing increase in MLS valuation?
I mean, it's kind of crazy. I bet if you speak with people like Jordan Gardner and so on, they have a clear opinion on why that is kind of crazy. I think that we shouldn't get caught up in terms of the valuation of things, basically because it's just an indicator. In the end, the pricing of something is the price that someone is willing to pay for it and the price at which someone is willing to sell. But as an indicator, the valuations and the perception of future growth, it is outstanding and actually shows that there's a clear upward trend in U.S. soccer, not only because of the sustained elevation of competition and the quality in the league, not only because Messi is coming, which evidently accelerates things, but also because the World Cup is going to be basically there, also in Mexico and Canada, but most of the games are playing there, and that's the biggest advertising market there is. The big question mark, even looking at the valuations, is what happens after the World Cup. Because if what happens after the World Cup is similar to what happened after the 94 World Cup, that means that those valuations will suffer because it will, tend to decline the interest. I really don't think it's more than a hope. I really don't think that it wouldn't happen this time because now the infrastructure and the notion of the game is different. Also in terms of demographics of the country. The demographics of the country are more keen and prone to actually consume football than before. So I think that's a good opportunity. But in terms of valuations go, it is a signal to potential buyers. In my point of view, the higher the valuations go in all actual American sports, the better it is for European properties to attract investors, because that means that as you progress in valuation and they keep climbing, you'll have a more smaller pool of potential buyers or investors into the sport because it's too expensive. And at a certain point, none of those valuations or investments and those valuations will make any sense in terms of trying to, get back a return on investment because it's too expensive. It's a matter of status, it's a matter of strategy, it's a matter of many other things. It's a matter of stability, which the American leagues give you in terms of the business, in terms of the competition. But it's not a matter of return on investment per se. So especially in the case of soccer, which I think has a little more time also ahead of them in terms to prove that standing amongst the top four American leagues like the NBA, MLB, NFL, and NHL.
It's funny that you mentioned Jordan Gardner because I actually asked him about this in the podcast a few months back. One of the things that he also mentioned is that's different today about American soccer is that it's finally becoming embedded into the American culture, because you also have your Ted Lasso, you have the interest that Ryan Reynolds is creating in Wrexham. So it's just that it's a different environment, right? With this in mind, do you think they will be able to become a league true international impact?
Absolutely. I mean, you can ask anyone, and actually you are able to compete at a highest level, which they still have room to grow there. But being the U.S., with the economics of the U.S., the way of life of certain parts of the U.S., you can attract talent very easily. And now you'll see a decline in the age of the talent that goes there. I mean, what the Saudis have to overpay for, the Americans don't have to overpay to get that talent. And the case of Messi is a clear example of that. So there was actually a bid between Saudi Arabia and the US. So, and then you see his way about going in life. I mean, he has a Navy SEAL as a bodyguard that helps, but in reality, actually, you can have a more normal life without the frenzy and the craziness that you could have in certain markets, especially also in Europe. So I think that for talent is a very good consideration. And especially if you are a very marketable talent, that's where the biggest advertisers are. So if you are in that market, which is arguably the biggest consumer market in the planet, it is the place to be. So once you know that you can bridge that gap in terms of attracting talent, it's a matter of having that sustainability. Now, by tradition of the MLS, they have been very conservative in terms of allowing exceptions to the salary cap rule, to how players are compensated, and so on, and that has dragged the growth. But I think that has made them sustainable in the mid to long term. So I do agree with the position that Jordan said, because actually now, compared to in the 90s, it wasn't even basketball in the 90s, a cultural phenomenon, let alone soccer. Now, soccer is crossing boundaries into a cultural, let's say, conversation that makes it relevant. Is what basketball is globally. It's a social equalizer. It's about lifestyle. It's about a way of thinking and seeing things, even from the social perspective. So soccer can have that power in the US as well.
It can. And what I think they're being very smart about is they're actually adapting that element of soccer becoming a part of the culture to the business. So, for example, when you look at the calendar of the MLS, you see that actually Messi is planned to play in the major markets in the second half of the season. So call it New York, call it Chicago, call it LA. They didn't know when they designed the calendar, but they knew something was there. So they said, well, in case this happens, let's have, let's plan it out this way, which is very smart.
No, absolutely. And they are savvy in that regard, and they know how to, everyone knows when the big games are playing way before the seasons start, because they know that those are the money makers, let's say in the Christmas or Thanksgiving, NFL football, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah. But this is not only something that you see in the MLS, right? You also see this in women's soccer. So, for example, the increase in valuations of teams has been just amazing. Right now, I think NWSL teams have an average valuation of $66 million. But just a couple of years ago, the owners of Angel City, which is probably one of the most popular teams in the world, or the San Diego Wave, paid about 2 million, 5 million for their expansion, right? So I don't know. Do you think? First, what do you think about that? What do you think about women's soccer in the US?
If you measure it by their competitive stature, they are the bosses. So women's soccer in the US has been sustainably successful in the global game for ages, and even at the local league level. So it was far more interesting to watch an NWSL game than an MLS game, for sure. In regards of the potential business, that is a big question mark. If actually you can generate the same amount of economics with women's sports and compared to male sports in general. I think there's a generational shift that is needed to actually to be able to equate that. Right now, for example, the WNBA finals are being played. But arguably two of the best basketball teams this year in any competition. And actually, it's an interesting basketball to watch. And actually, I think that there are elements there to make this successful and commercially viable. Now the debate actually in the US is if WNBA teams need to be part of NBA organizations or should be standalone. So and you could apply that for NWSL as well. The power of brand and marketing plays a big role. So when you see, for example, FC Barcelona, which has a successful men's team and a very successful women's team, if you try to do the experiment, and what if those teams were separate and would have been that successful or attractive globally to have a women's team that has no link to FC Barcelona, or even vice versa, you could say. It's tricky to put a number or point the finger into what will happen, but actually that debate is actually something that I see that could transpire in the US, because right now the structure of soccer in the US is too deep and wide for it to be, let's say, premium, high level, exclusive, and competitive enough for it to be economically reasonable. Let's say. So the scarcity that you see in the NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, NHL, you don't see in soccer because you have the MLS, of course, but then you have USL and there are two competitions, and you have NWSL and competitions. All of them have grassroots or entry level competitions, and it's kind of messy. So the thing is how you can simplify the structure to actually make it bigger. One of the bets that I heard, and I think also that way, is that after the World Cup, maybe we see some sort of consolidation in terms of North America between Mexico, Canada, and the US. That could make a very potent league because the Mexican teams are established and they now, as you can see, are signing also talent from Europe, and they are also preparing towards that future. So that's what's going to make even women and men football viable in North America. I think some sort of consolidation between the three countries and some sort of simplification in terms of the competition structures as well.
In a way, it seems kind of logical, if you will. I mean, now all markets are trying to create these joint bids for major international tournaments like the World Cup. I guess the next step in that evolution is, okay, let's get together to actually form stronger leagues. I guess that's a more challenging issue because, for example, in that, there's always going to be a league that's better than the other, and it's going to result negatively impact, and you're going to have more resistance clubs. But again,
but it's interesting. But there's precedent. I mean, Australia and New Zealand, they compete as one. Evidently, there's the insularity effect, the island effect that makes them, they are very secluded there. So it makes sense to merge. But there's also the conversation of the Benelux in Europe and how it will be interesting for the Netherlands, Belgium, and the adjacent countries to actually be able to compete together, because evidently their markets are very small. I mean, you couldn't think of having a Portuguese, Spanish macro league because it wouldn't make sense because of tradition and so on. But in certain markets in which there's some huge gap in terms of tradition and there's not a huge gap in terms of business, it could make sense to actually have, Mexico, US, and Canada play together and be a single market. I mean, if you look at the model of the American leagues, the NBA is essentially a league played between Canada and the US, and soon most probably will be also a team in Mexico, the F as well. So, those are things that can be considered from a business perspective and competitive perspective. Of course, evidently, it's not the same to have one team or two teams in Canada or one team or two teams in Mexico and then 28 teams in the US than having 20 teams in the US, 22 teams in Mexico, 12 teams in Canada. You need to create a system that allows everyone to be part of the pie.
Yeah, but if you look at, for example, the Leagues Cup that they have in the US with the Mexican teams and the American teams, that's kind of like call it a pilot program, if you will. No, let's see if that creates interest, which definitely after Messi joining and look at the run that they made, you would have to see if that's actually going to evolve into something more serious, call it, with competition that's year round, not just more fun. So given that context, do you think these valuations are sustainable both in the women's and
I guess so. I guess there's more room on the women's side because evidently I think that there's a clear signal of undervaluation in the women's side. I think that there's still room for more investment, more growth, and more commercial success. In the men's side is where I have my doubts because, as I said, then valuations only serve you if actually you have either hard assets that support that, or you have people that is willing to pay those prices. And in the case of sports in general, usually it's not about hard assets. It's about the perception of a future business or a current business. So it makes it a little bit crazy, let's say now, to have that. So imagine that, for, $1 billion, actually you can buy 2 first division teams in Spain and have some spare change still. And teams that have more than 100 years of existence.
Yeah, I was actually sharing this stat with Jordan Gardner on the show, and basically, if you think about it, I think Newcastle's latest valuation was $440 million. Newcastle United.
Yeah, when they
talk about a Champions League team, we're talking about a team with legacy, and then you see at LAFC, and they have like $1 billion in valuation. I mean, something's off there, It's
exactly.
But Rayde, you're a partnership. So how can brands capitalize on this momentum in the US? I mean, are there any key to which factors that they have to keep in mind now that there's this positive momentum?
I mean, in the end, it's a market that is geared toward consumption. So the most successful brands are the ones that are able to strategically align themselves with certain properties and then actually be able to convey a message that actually drives consumers to their product and or their services. And actually, evidently, there's a great opportunity because if you look at the structure of sports in the US, you have, let's say the highest average per partnership per game is the NFL because it's only 16 games a season, but it's of high demand. The example is the Super Bowl and the spots going for, 4 million, 5 million for 30 seconds on air, which is amazingly crazy, I would say. Then you have the NBA, then you have Major League Baseball. So soccer gives you a different perspective. Also because of the cities in which MLS and the USL as well are relevant and can be of interest for certain brands to attack that. So I think that now is definitely a low point. I think it will continue to grow the potential of revenue. So now is a good time to invest in partnerships that attack community. Compared to the big leagues in which is about the globality of the US and national games and visibility, that's where you see, let's say, what they call blue chip brands, insurance companies, car brands, big brands that actually make more efficient investment by doing sponsorship or partnerships than actually advertising. Is in essence, it's a sort of advertising model, not the traditional sponsorship model that we know here in Europe. In soccer, they have that with a massive discount. And you have teams in the big cities, but also you have cities like Nashville, which is interesting, Austin, which is very interesting, and then you have that mix of big mid-sized cities that can give you an opportunity. So definitely, even for international brands that want to break into the market, into the US, one of my recommendations to some of my clients is actually look at MLS and try to figure out how your product and service can be relevant in those areas, and use the halo effect of the globality of when you go play LA or New York or whatever, or when Messi comes to town, it goes global. When you can actually make a very wise decision investing in mid-sized markets as well.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. So thank you for that. And you've mentioned the NBA, the NFL, and I mean, the reality is you're a big connoisseur of the American sports market. So I want to ask about, how those different leagues are operating and what the football industry can run. And you mentioned the NFL. To give the audience some context, I think the NFL has annual revenues of $19 billion. And that's actually more than the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, and League One combined. So, I mean, it's just amazing. What do you think are the secrets behind the success?
And to give more context and more embarrassment to us, it's basically the US that is driving that type of revenue. So it's not even global business. And actually, they noticed that, and they are now in a decisive globalization strategy as well. So they are coming for the euros as well, and they're coming for the other currencies. And Europe for them is strategic. I mean, it goes to how you connect with your audience. And as I said before, the US is the biggest consumer market there is. So there's a lot of interest in actually watching NFL football and Major League Baseball and NBA basketball. And the goal is to actually, if you have that level of interest, is how you can then command those revenues in terms of partnerships, TV money, and so on. So what we can learn from them is actually the understanding is something that is very difficult. And to be honest, and I might be a little biased here, but the only sports company that has come closer, and it's still far, but it has come closer in Europe, is European basketball. Because the secret, although there's no secret there, but the secret for how they can leverage and extract maximum value is with the full centralization of rights. So they have a clear perspective of centralizing all global rights, centralizing IP, licensing, the merchandising, the ticketing, digital, and everything. And they allow evidently for local business to flourish around the team. So each franchise has the opportunity to to generate revenue locally, local TV, local partners, etc., etc. So you have that combined. The power of the globality or the muscle that you can show all together is by far better than a single team in a single market, no matter how big that team is. The Dallas Cowboys is a brand, a team that is on par with Real Madrid, Manchester United, or the New York Yankees as well.
Yeah.
But they are 1/30th of the whole. They don't go by themselves, or it's not just by themselves. They need the other clubs to compete. They need the other clubs to be able to have a robust product, and they need the other clubs to actually to generate. And the way they do that is by defining very clear commercialization rights and regions. And I don't know if you know, but they have something all leagues that is called the designated marketing area.
Yeah,
it's a bit complex to explain, but amongst other things is that those areas are the ones that impact the direct revenue that each club or each team receives directly. But also the logic between the whole. So you can have I don't know, Lakers jerseys being sold in Boston, which I don't think they all sold much, but any Laker jersey sold in Boston impacts mostly the Boston Celtics, right?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, I get that.
And vice versa. So that's the logic of it. So the bottom line is that the major difference that we have versus the Americans is that they do understand centralization. They trust the league in a centralized manner to manage their brand, and that's how they have been able to leverage more revenue per advertising minute, more revenue per ticket, more revenue for merchandising, more revenue for TV, and so on.
But that's, I guess, the benefit of having a franchise model, if you will, right? Where all the teams actually depend on the central structure, right? Versus in the European model.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an advantage when you have that from the beginning, for sure, which is an exception actually to the anti-monopoly laws in the US. It's an accepted cartel by law. So those are the very few monopolies that are allowed in the US. But in turn, if you look at the evolution and the professionalization of sports, I don't think there's any business executive in any, let's say, football club in Europe that don't understand the value of that. The thing is here that it is costly because of many things and a lot of political and financial damage to have people like, an executive of Real Madrid agreeing with one of FC Barcelona and saying, what, if we sell our things together, we'll get more money.
And I guess one of the things that also stands out to me from the NFL is that they actually play less games. But despite of that, they have more revenues in broadcasting, advertising, which kind of like contradicts, let's say, the traditional beliefs here in Europe. Why doesn't Europe look at a similar approach?
I mean, it's a model that it has different angles to the explanation. So, for example, the type of sport that they play is of high impact. You cannot play as many games, and imagine that each NFL team is around 55 players. So that's at least two full soccer clubs, right? So that's a complex thing to manage. And there's the reality is that the game is a very demanding, a very physically demanding game. So you cannot have as many games in football like you have in baseball, which is actually the competition that plays the most amount of games actually on the planet, because it plays in total more than 4,000 games per season. Each team plays 162 games in the regular season in baseball. So you have the two extremes there in the US, and they still manage to leverage and have more revenue than European competitions. I think the solution to that, or if there's a problem to solve, is actually to manage and balance scarcity with quality, but also with a correct framework that allows for that product to be a premium product. That's what the NFL is. It's a very premium product that, on top of that, is very scarce. Only 16 games, and tickets are very high. So mostly people watch TV, but stadiums are full. And evidently, if your team progresses and is playing well, and you reach Super Bowl and so on, it's something of another world. But they are selling out stadiums in Europe as well.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people traveling from the US, but there's a lot of local people. They've done their homework very well, and they know that in the UK they're relevant because of the entertainment factor, but they know that also in Germany they're relevant because there's a huge Americana culture there, and people is more linked to American sports than the common people will know. So that's why basketball and NFL is very relevant. So they research well how they can leverage their assets and make most revenue.
Quick fire question. Do you think the NFL is actually going to become a major sport in Europe? Is it going to compete with football, for example?
I don't think so, but I don't think that that's their objective neither. They are in the events business. So for them, it's about selling out Wembley, selling out the Hotspur Stadium, selling out Frankfurt, selling out Munich, selling out the Bernabeu, which we'll definitely soon see again being played in Madrid in the Bernabeu. So.
And you also know a lot about the NBA. And to me, it's a remarkable example of how to become a global brand, really. So do you see a football league out there that's capable of coming close to replicating that model, or what would need to be true for that to happen?
I mean, it's tricky because in basketball, there's the confluence of different aspects. There's no sport that is so embedded to lifestyle and culture than basketball. So you can actually wear shoes that are meant to play for fashion. You cannot do that with soccer cleats. On the opposite, you can say the same for the football jerseys and not the basketball jerseys, which are less, let's say, wearable, less formal for certain aspects. But the reality is that what basketball means is far beyond that. It's about the impact on music and the feedback that music has on basketball as well, in fashion, in technology. So, and that actually carries basketball globally, not necessarily the game itself. The NBA stars or the EuroLeague stars, they uplift the game on a local basis and sometimes even global, but it's about the lifestyle and what basketball means. So being on the court side in a basketball arena in the US is a status symbol.
I'm actually smiling because we were at an event together a couple of weeks ago, and you're totally right. You were wearing basketball cleats, basketball shoes at the event, and it looked cool. Really, it did. And I'm also thinking, what you mentioned is interesting. And that's something that you see Paris Saint-Germain doing this with the, obviously, Air Jordan brand, which is a basketball brand, right? So they're trying to tap into lifestyle and culture. So yeah, interesting trend there. And it's also, I mean, to me, from a social media content that we're talking about before, I've just been amazed about how they've activated, as they call him, Wemby, the number one pick in the draft for San Antonio. No? So what can, the football industry learn from that? Is that how you create a quote unquote hero today's day and age?
Absolutely. I think that's the best case to do it. And actually, for that to happen in football, especially from the European perspective, you need to forego the short-termism of I need to sign a striker that gives me 30 goals so I can win the Champions League this year. Because what the NBA did or what happened with Luka Doncic in the EuroLeague and so on, it is a matter of understanding talent, knowing that talent, if fostered correctly, will arrive, and being able to accompany it in the journey. So that the logic what we were saying before. So you had a camera crew in Michael Jordan and the Bulls in '97, not knowing when you will air that. You were just sure that you were seeing history and recording it, and then from then something else will happen.
Yeah.
That notion that it's a long-term game is very foreign for European decision makers, not only in soccer, I mean, in basketball, in other sports and rugby. So you need to actually have that mentality and say that a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid will reach professionalism in the next 3 years, but you need to start documenting his story now, and if you can, also telling his story now and his evolution, so people feel a bond with him, so a generation feels represented with him. So when he finally makes it, you all of a sudden bring him and his audience with him. And no one does that better than the NBA. Because the NBA is a players' league. So people are fans, and I like the Knicks and people of teams, but people follow players and the journey of players and the stories of players. And since that's their leitmotif, then they do that even from the beginning. So they did Wemby, the year he knew that he will declare. They're doing that now with another French talent. I believe his name is Alex Sarr, which is playing in Australia, because they know he will eventually go there. Maybe not next year. Maybe he'll come into Europe, play in the EuroLeague, but he will eventually go there. So that's the logic of actually doing that hero searching, but hero making strategy to be able to identify talent and actually be able to develop into players. On the flip side, you have other leagues that done with the same objective, but done things that are different.
And the NBA has definitely been pioneering that. And they have, you have to bet on a story. Maybe that happens or doesn't happen. So, for example, the Ball brothers is another example. No, they had huge potential. It's not because of lack of talent. It's just a lack of injuries that, the player just doesn't develop. So let's see how that, right? Maybe it's part of this.
No. One of them now is the face of a brand. And it's a great kid. Maybe he needs to be in a different team to actually be able to contend for a championship. And let's see if he's up to that. But the kid is talented, the young one, the Lamelo. That's the thing. But if you look at the NFL, what the NFL is doing, not only in developing markets in Europe to actually try to bring a game to Madrid or whatever, and let's say the more business or the more evident business decisions, like event basis, they are identifying talent, because they know that if you have, let's say, the next African Pro Bowl All-Star player, you win Africa. So they are looking for players in Africa.
There you go. Yeah, true. Moving on, you also know very well about the Major League Baseball. And to me, it's another amazing case of what I call fan-led innovation. And they did this without compromising the legacy of the game, which is what I find interesting. And they actually listened to fans. They were, fans were complaining that games were too long. And, so they made certain changes there to improve really the experience. So is that feasible in the football industry or not?
It should. If not, there's huge trouble. There's no more traditionalist sport than baseball.
Yeah.
I bet that against any other sports, football or whatever. And actually they saw that. But they didn't saw that this year. It's a logic that if you don't evolve, you tend to rot and die. So that's something that they identified. But for this season, they changed the rules of the game. So the games are faster, more interesting. They let's say they enlarge the bases, so you have more players being able to steal bases, because that's a good play. They put a timer so pitchers need to throw faster. They those are the things. Maybe football needs to start thinking about the rule book and having less traditionalism and romanticism that is not there. The people love football because of other things, because of how it makes them feel, not because offside, for example, which is an understandable rule anyhow. So that's the thing. But merely in baseball, and I as a Dominican, I am first and foremost, I've been a basketball executive all my adult life, but I'm a baseball fan first. What they did in 2000, in the middle of the dot-com bubble, was to think how they could better their fan experience. And they decided to invest in it. And they created a company that will service them first to create the website, the apps. They failed miserably. They tried again. And they commit a lot of money, like $1 million per season during 4 seasons per each one of the clubs. That's $30 million to invest in and develop. It was so successful that they stopped investing mid-plan because it was profitable already. And they sold it like a couple of years ago to Disney altogether in different moments, but the last tranche was sold 2 years ago. And they managed to get for themselves, for the club, $3 billion, over $3 billion in value. that, by the way, don't go into salary cap. It goes to the pockets of the owners. So that's the logic of how Americans, and especially a sport that is so traditional as baseball, has looked at the way the product can enhance, so the business can be enhanced, so fans can be retained. Now we've seen something that people thought that it will never happen. They will change certain rules of the game that was considered to be sacrosanct. I think football needs to start looking at that as well.
So I guess that begs the question. You talked about changing the game, changing the rule book, changing the format. That's something that the Kings League did. Do you think, so is Kings League a threat or an opportunity?
I don't think it's a threat. I have great friends there. I think they have a great entertainment product, and that serves a very defined audience, the younger audience that wasn't being served by the traditional sport. If anything, I like, and this is a hope, I hope that the Kings League sample is an example for the leagues, for the football leagues and the confederations and the FIFA, in order to tweak the product, the game, so it's more attractive for the younger generation. So that's the thing. It's not just the thesis of the Super League of more games between the best. Yeah, that could be part of it, but it's not the full solution. It is also changing the rules. And I say this with the knowledge of the EuroLeague. The EuroLeague is the game, it's a game between the best, or competition between the best teams in basketball in Europe. Yes, but the rule book of the EuroLeague is slightly different than the FIBA rule book. It's not the same. There's a set of rules that enhances the audience experience, and that's important. So what the Kings League has done, and is doing actually, is a great example that with a sport like soccer, you can actually try different things. Definitely, I don't see, the surprise cards in the middle of a Champions League game. I don't see that happening, but I do see, changing the consideration about offside. Why you need to have offside? If you probably, without offside, you'll have more goals, and what people want to see is goals, and have to, more scoring. So that's the rule that we'll look at. Maybe in terms of faults and shoots and penalties and so on, that's the type of thing that you need to look at. The time, you don't need to play an hour and a half to define which team could be a winner. I guess that the players will also, find that attractive, playing, less minutes, even if it's the same amount of games. In the end, it's less minutes on the legs. So you can have players get injured less and play longer careers and have your stars for longer. I don't know. But it's the same thing that I would say for the NBA, which is something that I know that they are considering. The World Cup was a great show. The basketball World Cup was a great show about a level playing field. So you have Germany, a world champion. You have an American team with great talent that couldn't make it to the medals. But the reality is that you could have the same amount of intensity playing 8 less minutes on regular timing in a basketball game. Like we play in Europe, we play Europe 4 quarters of 10. That's also better for players. That's also better for avoiding injuries and so on. So, we cannot be afraid to touch here and there certain things that seem, set in stone to better the product. So our audience is still there and want to consume and buy our product.
Right, and that's a debate that the MLS, that the Major League Baseball face. Legacy versus the fan experience. How can you combine both?
And nowhere right now, and the season now is in the later stage. Now they're in the league finals, and then the World Series will come. So no one is questioning the legacy right now. What they know is that the game now, on average, was played in less than 3 hours. I sat at games that were played in 4 hours, and some games were even longer. Yeah. So that's nonsense in today day and age. Younger generations won't sit for 4 hours to watch a game.
I knew this was going to be fun, but not so much fun. Anyway, I want to be respectful of your time. I just have a few more questions left. Maybe we can do just kind of like rapid fire. Because you've also talked about phygital experiences, and that's something, that's a word I've been hearing being thrown around a lot. So I don't know, what can we see? What can we expect from phygital? Is the future here? Is that the key to unlock growth in the international markets? I mean, whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's more than the future, the present. I think that the adding layers of immersive reality into sports is something that is happening already. EuroLeague has had virtual reality in the Final Fours. They also have first view cameras on referees. Now they are testing with players also to have that view for the audience. It's about accommodating for what the audiences might like. Also, in the end, it's not about doing tech for the sake of doing tech. It's about adding to the viewer experience or the consumer experience. So if you add, I don't know, maybe an opportunity to project added information, live, real-time information on your TV or your living room or your glasses or as a second device on your phone, that adds to the experience. Why not? And I think that definitely physical as a wider concept, but based on mixed reality, virtual, augmented reality is something that definitely will transform the way we consume sports.
Logic seems to suggest that those digital experiences are going to become more convenient as time move on, and that's something we discussed before. No, the more convenient they are, the more accepted they're going to be, right? And that's when you're going to see new levels. And something else that you alluded to before is that today's fan is fragmented and probably less intense, right? And so, how do brands adapt to this new type of fan from a partnership perspective?
I think it's perfect because I've been in meetings with brands that were afraid to communicate because of certain team loss.
Yeah.
So it came to that absurdity, right? So we cannot publish this because the team lost yesterday, and we cannot be seen as insensitive. I mean, in the end, it's a game. It's not life or death. So it's a game and it's for entertainment. So the less, let's say, emotionally charged the fans are, they need to be engaged. But the less emotionally charged the fans are, the better it is for brands because they can communicate and say, you know what, F it. We lost today. Let's win tomorrow, and that's it. It's as simple as that.
Interesting. Any other trends to watch out in terms of partnerships that we haven't talked about today?
I'm pumped to what could happen in terms of venue partnerships. Especially in Europe, there's a huge homework to be done, which is the updating of all the venues. Yeah. And just coming from the US and seeing a brand new venue and seeing how it performs, how integrate brands, how integrate the viewing the game experience is just amazing. And it's not, I mean, you don't need to make the Sphere in Vegas to actually make it interesting. It doesn't need to be a 2.4 billion investment. Yeah. It just needs to be new, technically connected, sustainable.
Just a 1.8 billion.
Yeah, no, even half a billion will do it. So the thing is that I definitely am eager to do that because brands want to be where entertainment happens, where fans are enjoying, and that's also a good opportunity for business for the even the properties that own their own venue. If you have an up-to-date venue and you don't only play football or basketball there, but you also do concerts and do events and do things and have that venue occupied, you can have more sources of revenue. And your fans or your audience in your city can actually engage better with you in your market.
I actually moderated a panel once at Football Innovation Forum with Villarreal and La Liga. And what the conclusion was is that actually it's the venue that is the element that differentiates sports from other forms of entertainment. So it makes complete sense from a business perspective for football properties to invest in the stadium because it's what's going to make the fan actually get up from its couch, stop watching TV, and then go experience the sport properly.
No, absolutely, and transcends the city, right? A venue, a sports venue is like a heart or a lung in a city. So whatever happens there actually, clogs or affects positively or negatively the rest of the city. So technology, and there are partners, very well-known brands, MasterCard or Intel or brands like that are interested in actually investing in those venues, but not just the venue and the sport per se, in the venue and the interaction with the whole city and the people that passes by or goes into the venue, right?
Yeah. Rayde, one last question from my side. We've launched a new rebranding at World Football Summit. We're calling out for a new football industry, one that's committed to innovation, to excellence, to sustainability. If you could define the football you want or the football you need in 1-2 sentences, something like, how would you do it?
I want a football. I think that we need a football that is not shy of understanding that it's a business, but also that understands that it has a responsibility to be a sustainable and, I would say, equal opportunity business. So it's a matter of understanding that the better we do as an industry in economic terms, we need to make sure that we look back, look around, look above and below to actually be able to reinvest in the communities that we are and allow more people to be part of the industry.
Definitely. I think the industry needs to commit to the 3 pillars of sustainability. So it's economic, environmental, and social. So, Rayde, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. We're going to have to do a round 3 because this was so much fun. And I think there's going to be so many more topics to discuss in the future. Some things I have had to left out, but, have a lot of notes here to look through. Where can people learn more about you? I don't know. You want to share what's next for you? Anything you want to share with the audience?
Well, I really thank you for the opportunity. Really looking for round 3, 4, 5, or whatever rounds we might need. And I'm always open to discuss opportunities, not only business wise, but if I advise, if I invite, valuable for anyone to advise, so people can find me on social media with Rayde Luis BT. That's my handle in all platforms. And yeah, looking forward to see people around also WFS Asia in Jeddah soon.
Thank you, Rayde. It's been amazing. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you in Jeddah in a couple of weeks. Have a great day, my friend. And yes, we'll be back for round 3 at some point in the near future. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jaime.
And there you have it, Rayde Luis Baez, in what was another awesome conversation about sports content. So many takeaways from this one. Let me try to sum it up. First, storytelling has become a key to play factor for football properties. The thing is that there's not enough good or relevant content out there. So a good story is the key for it to become a success. I also found very interesting that concept of brands closing partnership deals with MLS franchises to access smaller markets. And then you use the halo effect of the major sports properties coming to town to create global awareness. What are some lessons that football can learn from American sports leagues? These include embracing the long term when thinking about storytelling. Look at the Wemby case. Look at what they did with Jordan. They started actually filming in 1997 for something that was going to be published in 2020. So again, bet on the story. Also, don't be a prisoner to the legacy of the game. Look at baseball. They were able to innovate, prioritizing the fan experience while having a deep respect for the legacy. And about the NFL. Well, they're a prime example of the value of having centralized rights, IP, broadcasting, marketing, etc. They make sure the overall product is good. And then they distribute all the revenues across all teams to ensure that, the quality of the product is good. What's more, the NFL is a great example of a property that has been able to balance scarcity and quality to create a premium product. Finally, the football industry Rayde wants and needs embraces the 3 pillars of sustainability: economic, social, and environmental. It is not shy to understand it is a business, but also responsible for being sustainable and creating equal opportunities for all. Did anything else stand out to you? Let us know on social media. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast on your platform of choice and share it with your industry colleagues. Oh, and before we go, remember, if you're ever in Madrid and you're looking for a place to network effectively, to share a traditional Spanish snack but with a modern touch, or simply enjoy a relaxing moment for yourself with a delicious, sweet pastry to break your day, make sure you visit La Hermosita. You won't miss. I'm not kidding. I once bought my wife a small piece of pie for a special occasion, and she just loved it. So again, visit La Hermosita, and when you go there, make sure you tell them you heard about them on the World Football Summit. You can find the link to their website on the notes of the episode. And remember, you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, and you can also find that link on the show notes of the episode. Finally, I hope, we see you at World Football Summit Asia on December 12th and 13th in Jeddah. It's going to be just amazing. I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of the World Football Summit podcast. We hope you enjoyed and you learned something new. I'm sure I did. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you next time.